Hello, everyone. Quality meat available. And a lot of you homesteaders are really fortunate to be able to put your hands on this kind of meat. It's the kind of food, it's the food money can't buy. We hear that expression a lot. Something so good that it doesn't matter how much money you have, you can't buy it. So, what are we talking about? Food money can't buy? Well, we're going to get into that in just a minute here. Let me say hello to those of you who have joined us. We got Cascadia Microstead, finally able to make one of these live sessions. It's been a while since we've seen you guys there at Cascadia. Ellen, Wholesome Roots. The notifications were off. Dragon Mask, nice, finally caught one of these live. So thank you for joining us, guys. There's 17 watching now. I'm sure we'll have some more joining us in a little bit. If you have any questions for me during today's show, please tag at Homesteady in the sidebar there in the chat box. We're going to be taking questions towards the end, and I don't want to miss your questions if you're here live. So make sure tag at Homesteady so that those stand out, and we'll be able to answer your questions. So thanks for joining us. Vloggle Goggles says hello. It's good to be here with you guys. We're going to try to find a regular time for our Farm Friday shows. We're experimenting a little bit right now with this is 1 o'clock, or it's 2 o'clock Eastern. We tried 3:30. We might try a little bit more towards the evening. We'll see what works best for the most of the fans, and we'll try to run with that. So what are we talking about? Food that money can't buy. Well, this last week I had the best chicken, hands down, that I've ever had in my life. And the worst part was it wasn't actually chicken. Just tasted like chicken. So let me explain. Best chicken of my life wasn't actually chicken. Now, this is coming from a guy who, as a lot of you know, raises all my own chicken. I have a pastured poultry business, small side of our farm business. But every year we raise Cornish crosses. This year we raised the Freedom Rangers or the Red Rangers. One of those Rangers, I forget which kind. But we put a lot of effort into having really good quality chicken to eat. You'd think I'd say that my own chicken that I sell to my customers is the best quality, the best meat that I could eat. And as far as quality goes, it's really good quality meat. I'm not going to dock my own good stuff. But I think Ellen's picking up on what we're going to talk about here. She says pheasant and quail are so good. And that's what we're talking about today. The best chicken that I ever had was not chicken. It was a pheasant meal that we enjoyed this week. So a lot of you have been following our YouTube channel. You know me and my pup. I've been training my dog for the last 2 years to get to this season for bird hunting. Now, why have I been training for 2 years? Well, last year I had him on birds, but not in the field, and they were just chuckers, the smaller game bird. But now we were working him towards this season, which is his second year, where he could actually handle going out into the field, where I felt comfortable enough. He might have been able to handle it sooner, but it was more when me and him combined were ready to go out into just public land here in Connecticut and go pheasant hunting. And this season started off, pheasant season starts in October. So we started October, I think it was the 20th, heading out and trying our hand at public land. I'd never been public land bird hunting before, and I wasn't sure what to expect, but we had taken a lot of time and a lot of preparation to get to this point, and so I was really excited to give it a shot. We got out there. First couple days I was out pheasant hunting. I got really excited when the bird flushed. I actually went with my son the first time that we flushed a wild pheasant. I was out hunting with my son, who, by the way, is here today. My 7-year-old son is running our sound. Say hi, buddy.
Hi.
And if we do get any super chats today, I'm splitting them with my son because he's saving up for a Lego Boost. So if you're feeling generous, the super chat, somebody asked me last week, what is a super chat? Down in the chat box, there's that little dollar sign. If you click the super chat button, you can donate $1, $2, $5, whatever it is to help us do these live shows. They help us run the show. We're incredibly grateful for them. But I'll be splitting them with the Lego Master over here because he's running our sound today. So anyways, me and my son and my pup, Bones, who you've watched me been working with him and training him, headed out. And we were fortunate enough that day that we went out to flush not one, but 2 pheasants. I had a really nice pheasant rooster. As soon as we got to the property, I could hear him clucking. And we went and we found him. We flushed him. And I got so excited for that very first, public land rooster flush. I was shaking so bad when I brought the gun up to the mount. I couldn't shoot straight. So I missed him. And a little bit later, I missed another one. I do need some tips, guys. If you have any good tips, please share them in that chat box. If you know a good way, any advice on how to shoot birds, I got to slow it down. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I'm getting too excited. But needless to say, as you know how this ends, we finally did get a pheasant. And we actually got that on camera too, which was pretty cool. We went out and we got, the week previous, I got a nice pheasant hen with my pup, which was not on camera. That was our very first pheasant on public land. And then this last week, we were able to get a rooster. I missed him the first time, but I was able to just wing him on the second shot. And my pup did most of the work. He went and found the rooster and brought it back, which you can see in the video we posted earlier this week. So that was an interesting hunt, but it ended with a delicious bird. And I wanted really that experience of having that big full roaster bird for my family to enjoy. We never had pheasant as like a roasted chicken. And so I decided to do some research on how to cook the pheasant the right way. I've heard mixed opinions as to whether or not pheasant is good eating, as you always do with wild game. Some people says it's great, some people says eh. So I was looking online, and I've heard of Hank Shaw before. I know him as a source of really good advice for wild game. I decided to dive in and see what Hank Shaw's advice was on pheasants. Hank Shaw runs a website called honestfood.net. We have a link in the description of this video if you want to check him out. He has a few YouTube videos. He's very active on Instagram, which you can see. We have here, his Instagram is Hunt Gather Cook. Awesome Instagram page. If you guys are on Instagram, first find us, we're Homesteady Show, and then find Hank Shaw and tell him that you heard about him from Homesteady. But he had some great advice on how to have really good quality venison. The first advice he gave was to age the bird. Now, this is advice I had heard from years back when I very first started hunting. An old-time hunter, John McDonald was his name. I knew him my whole life, and he was probably 90 years old by the time I started hunting, and he was telling me this advice. So you really take that. That's weighty advice, man, somebody with that many years of experience. And he was from England. He grew up a sportsman, and he shot plenty of pheasants. He said, he told me a story. He said one day he was out. He had just come to the States, moved to America, and he was out driving with someone. They're driving down a dirt road, and a pheasant walks out onto the road. And this man grabs his gun, hops out of the truck, and doesn't even flush the pheasant. He shoots it on the ground. And John, this English sportsman, was mortified that he would shoot a bird that hadn't flushed yet. Just seemed incredibly unsportsmanlike. Then he goes over and he grabs the pheasant, and he says, "This will make a great dinner tonight." And that, if John wasn't mortified enough already, that just sent him over the edge. He says, you cannot eat pheasant without aging it. You have to hang it on the side of the barn, give it a week. So I'd heard about aging the birds before, but I wanted to learn more about it. So I found a great article that Hank Shaw wrote all about aging birds. He talked about the science behind it. He found some really good sources that backed up this idea. He said in this article to age it with the guts in it and the feathers on it, which as a guy who raises chickens and processes chickens, this seemed very contrary to what I know about, taking care of poultry for the dinner table. But I decided, hundreds and thousands of years worth of tradition has not led us astray. Hank had some good sources, so I trust him on that. He also mentioned brining the bird in a saltwater brine. And finally, right the night before, you're going to cook it, putting it in the refrigerator with the feathers now off and it's gutted, but just the skin out to get it a little dried out, which makes a nice crispy bird. So I took all of Hank's advice. I went through his recipes and all his articles. I took all the advice, and man, it was a lot of work. But that was the best tasting chicken I have ever had in my life. When you served it on the table, it looked like a roasted chicken for my kids. It had a very plump breast. The meat on the bird there was lots of meat, the thighs, the drumsticks, everything was really nice. It was a good sized rooster. And my goodness, did it taste amazing. Which got me to thinking something that we talked about in a video that we put out last week. Last week we were talking about the value of grinding your own burger, your own venison burger compared to, the cost comparison. And we talked about how I had saved hundreds of dollars, grinding up that meat, comparing it to organic free range meat that you would purchase nearby. And you can make that comparison. You can compare venison with beef you would buy. You can compare other things too. You can compare the pheasant with a roasted chicken, roasted chicken that you'd get either at the supermarket, and do a cost breakdown dollar for dollar. But here's the thing, this comparison becomes tricky because the thing about wild game is that it's food that money can't buy, because you literally can't buy it. Now, a little asterisk here. Here in the United States, you cannot buy wild game. It's actually illegal to sell wild game. Now, I know somebody in the chat box is going to say, oh, I just bought venison from this store, or Arby's was selling venison on the menu for a while. Well, yes, you can buy venison. You can buy wild boar. You can buy pheasant. But this is all animals that have been raised on a farm. Wild game, animals that are out in the woods and out in the fields, cannot be sold. That's illegal in the United States. So it's something that you cannot buy. Wild game truly wild game comes from the forest to your pickup truck bed to your kids' dinner plate. There's no processing facility in between the meat and your family. There's no shipping time where the steaks are sitting in the back of a truck and then spending time on the shelf. Wild game is only something that can be acquired through hard work, long hours, and determination. And that is something that we talked about in today's video on YouTube. We released a video this morning called The Keys to Success for Your Deer Season. And in that video, I talk about how this hunting season started off pretty difficult for me. And it took me a long time to get my first deer in the freezer this year. There was a lot of days I went out, 6 days in a row I went out, I didn't even see any deer. But I set these goals and they pushed me forward. And that's what wild game takes. It takes hard work. It takes setting a goal and pushing towards it, and being able to finally make that goal happen. So now we're very fortunate. We talked about last week, we got a freezer full of venison, hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of good quality beef. But we also have a freezer full of pheasant and chukar now. And those pheasants will soon be on my family's dinner plate again. There's not a lot of pheasants because, like I said, I missed so many of them. And somebody in the chat box said to Google instinctive shooting. So I'm going to look that up because that sounds like right up my alley, like something I could use. But this is exciting because my freezers are full of really wild game. And my kids, my family, they love wild game. The kids gobble up. When you put venison on their plate, it's gone. When you put the pheasant out there, gone. They love the taste, the flavor of wild game. They eat it much quicker than its domestic counterparts. So this winter, our family is going to eat good. We're heading into winter, which is, the end of the harvest season, end of hunting season. We have all the animals we worked hard to raise here on the farm. Now, to supplement those meals, we have these wild game dinners, which are incredibly just full of flavor, good for us. I mentioned that the worst part back at the beginning of this episode, I said the worst part of that chicken dinner was that it wasn't chicken. And that's because now I can't go out and buy any more pheasant. It was so delicious, but we can't have it anymore. Well, what does that mean? It just means I got to go spend more time in the field. So there could be worse fates in life. I'm going to take a second here and say hello to whoever's still with us. We got 15 of you guys still sitting here in the live stream. I'm going to take a look and see if there's any questions. Cascadia says they're getting a Brittany pup in a few weeks to train for upland birds. Awesome. That's going to be a lot of fun. I'm a lab guy myself, but I love training a pup. Wholesome Root says to practice with skeet. I believe it or not, I do. Just something different. The clay pigeon compared to, making that jump over into the pheasant. It's I don't know. It's different for me. But people are saying shoot lots of clay, and I could definitely shoot more. Brant says, I've heard the word meat now. I'm hungry. I hear that. All right. So I don't see any questions yet. Cook our pheasant in pear cider. It's beautiful. That sounds amazing. So nice, guys. So let's talk about the question of the week. Each Friday, we're going to do a question of the week with these live chats. And these questions come from people who leave a comment on one of our videos. If you leave a question for us in Facebook, wherever, Instagram, wherever you like to observe our content, if you leave a question, you may be the question of the week. And this week's question of the week comes from a YouTube user, LineFlyer1. LineFlyer's not in our live chat today. Too bad. I thought he might be. He asks, I always wondered what a pheasant tasted like. Did it taste like chicken or gamey chicken? Well, obviously, this was the perfect question for this week. So I decided we'd cover this question in today's live stream. Pheasant does taste a lot like chicken. If I served it for someone here and I didn't tell them what it was, they would probably think it was chicken. But there was a flavor. If you've ever had heritage breed roosters or heritage breed hens for the chicken pot pie or the soup bowl, you know that there's a much stronger flavor, and not in a bad way. A lot of times people use the word gamey to describe a negative flavor. Sometimes if meat is handled improperly, especially wild game, it can have a funny flavor. I use it to describe this flavor. It tasted like chicken, but with a stronger, more delicious flavor. And it was gamey in the sense that it was different. It was a wild flavor, but it was so good. It is hard to describe a taste, especially 2 weeks, a week or so after you've had it. So just take it as it will taste like chicken, but it will taste like the best quality, the best tasting chicken you've ever had, and not a bad flavor. I do have young kids who can be picky, and if it had a funny flavor, they would not have eaten it. But did you eat your pheasant?
Yep.
Gobbled it up. So that's the question of the week. We also had a few people ask me, which I thought I would cover in today's show, in what shotgun I was using in our pheasant hunting videos. So this is the shotgun you see in the pheasant hunting videos. This is a Franchi shotgun. It is a very fancy shotgun. If you're looking at it, you can see the nice pretty inlays. This is a much fancier gun than I would have ever got for myself. It was an anniversary gift from my father-in-law, and it's a beautiful shotgun. It is an over-under. A lot of guys who shoot upland birds use an over-under. There's 2 barrels, which means you have 2 chances to get the bird, and as you guys know, I could use both those chances. You have a top barrel and a bottom barrel, 2 shells in it, and this is a shotgun. It's a break action, so that means it's ready to fire. When you are done shooting, you pop that out, the ejectors spit out your shells, and it's a really nice field gun. It's a little bit shorter than, for example, maybe a trap gun, but which is a little bit nicer because, boy, we hit the brush hard, me and my pup, when we're out in the field, and going through the brush, moving through the thick stuff. We have found a lot of the pheasants we're able to get are pheasants that are deep in the brush or in lots of thick cover, ones that maybe a lazier hunter wouldn't go and attempt to find. So we go deep into that brush, and it's nice to have a bit shorter gun that's easy to handle and get up to your shoulder fast. So that's my gun. All right, guys, we're coming to a close on our live show today. So if you have any other questions, be sure to get them in quickly. Scott says, love your vids, man. Very informative for someone like me. Getting ready to start my homestead journey. Thank you very much. Scott, you're welcome. Glad they're helpful. Claire asks, how is it going with your milk cow? You guys enjoying fresh milk? Would love to see more videos on that. Claire's been dropping hints. So I actually told my wife next week I got to start filming her morning routine again, get some more updates on the milking. It's going awesome. Our next week you'll hear, if you follow our podcast, go to iTunes, search for Homesteady. You can get our podcast. We do put them here on YouTube too, so you won't miss them. But our podcast next week, we talk a lot about the whole birth, the cow, the calving, and the milk we're getting and the quality of the milk. But it's amazing quality milk. The flavor from this Jersey cow is incredible. The cream layer is 2 inches thick on some of these bottles. Talk about food money can't buy. It's amazing. So it's going really good. This whole dairy experience has changed 180 degrees. I was reluctant to get back into the dairy thing after our experience with goats, but this cow has changed my mind. I don't think there's a better animal for a homestead to have, as long as you're in it to win it. If you're not just, a part-timer and you get tired of things. If you really stick into homesteading, I don't think there's a better animal for your homestead than a cow. And honestly, some people with way less land than us could still have one, which we'll get into as winter goes on. We'll talk about feeding cows and what we're doing to supplement her diet, because we don't have any pasture throughout the winter for her. So we can talk about that. Dragon Mask says, did you ever tell us what you decided to name the calf? We did not tell you guys yet. We haven't done an update video on the calf. But you're here live and we're going to answer your questions. So Dragon Mask, the calf's name, first time we're announcing it to anybody here, is Luna Moth. So we have Ladybug and then Luna Moth. And we decided that name. She has a mark on her side that looks like a little Luna Moth. And Ladybug, Luna Moth, who doesn't love alliteration? So we went with Luna Moth. And right now she's getting big, and Kendra's starting to train her, put her on a halter. I saw her this morning out there wrangling, my cowgirl out there wrangling her cows. So it's been really fun. Yep, she was pulling, if any of you know what the Jersey flop is, right now we're experiencing the Jersey flop, trying to train this little calf. So it's been really fun, and we will have some update videos on that. So thank you guys for joining us today. Be sure to next Friday join us for the live stream. We're going to be talking about remodeling our creepy basement. In just 1 week and under $500, we were able to turn a creepy basement into a really nice playroom for the kids. So we're going to be sharing some tips on how to do a little quick, down and dirty, cheap remodels, especially for you guys with a bunch of kiddos. We have a very small house. Okay, I shouldn't say that. We have a small house, comparatively speaking. 1,600 square feet, which a lot of families these days have a lot more. I'm not complaining. We have plenty of space for our family, but we are a family of 6, and we were able to add tons more usable space to our life with this basement remodel. So we'll talk about some tips on doing that on the cheap, and how we were able to get it all done in just a week. And no doubt we'll be sharing some other things too next week. If you want to make sure you don't miss any of our live streams, sign up to our email list. Go to thisishomesteady.com. On the front page, there's a button that says join us. Click it, give me your email. Every Friday before we go live, we send out an email. YouTube does not always send you notifications. They don't send you all of our videos. They don't send you all of our stuff. So YouTube thinks it knows better than you do what you want to watch. You want to take that control back from YouTube, sign up to our email list. I'll send you all our videos that we produce every week, all our podcasts, and let you know when we're going live. That way you don't miss any of it. And you can be sure to join us here for all of it. And if you still can't get enough Homesteady, you can become a Homesteady Pioneer. Click on the card for this video. It's $5 a month. And in return for that... Camera shutting down my pitch here. In return for that, you get bonus content. We have bonus videos, bonus podcasts, classes. We have a really good, as far as kind of food and cooking goes, we have a culinary instructor who taught an hour-long class all about food preservation. Trish from Honey Pies Recipes teaches that, and the pioneers have access to that full class. So you can click on the card to help support our show and help us keep doing this. In return, you get that, and you also get discounts from all of our homesteady vendors, which if you're raising chickens or if you got a homestead like ours, can come in handy. Thanks for joining us, guys. I do see one more question. How do you feel about raising tame pheasants? Stephen wants to know. Stephen, tame in quotations. I've never seen a tame pheasant like a backyard flock of chickens. The farms that I see around here raising them, they seem pretty wild. They have complete netting over the top, sides of the pen. My wife raised pheasants growing up. She said, that she'd heard that as if you keep feeding them, they'll come back even if you let them out. So they raised them, they opened the gate, said, out you go, and whoosh, they never saw them again. So I don't know that you ever get a tame pheasant, but if you want to raise them for food, make sure you have a really good full enclosed pen. Otherwise, I think they'll be feeding the coyotes. Justin has a question about an 18-acre farm. Congrats, he just bought. It's mostly pastured ground, and he's having a hard time deciding where the orchard should go. Any tips? Justin, we put our orchard in a spot with good sun, and it was close enough it was in between us and the animals. To tell you honestly, we picked that spot because it had a little bit of a gentle slope. It got good morning sun, but we do talk about this a lot at length on our channel. We interviewed Dave from Northeast Edible, who, by the way, is a Homesteady Pioneer vendor. If you want to get all your orchard plants 10% off, become a Homesteady Pioneer, and you can get 10% off all your orchard plants. That'll save you way more than being a pioneer will ever cost you. But anyway, I interviewed Dave about this topic, and I will put a link right now in the chat box. Hang with me here. I will find this video. We talked to Dave about starting up an orchard, and he did a masterclass for us in the Pioneer Library, all about orchards, which if you're a pioneer, you have access to. But for you guys who aren't, I want to make sure I get you the YouTube video. So let's search my channel. We're going to search, let me see here. We're going to search orchard. Oh, perfect. So I got a perfect video. It's called How to Choose a Location for Planting Fruit Trees and Bushes on the Homestead. And because it has been so long since I did that video with Dave, I no longer remember his advice. But Justin, I hope that video helps you. And anybody else who has that question, I'm going to put that, I'm going to add that to our description here. So now people can see the orchard questions answer. All right, guys, we're going to shut it down. Thank you for joining us for this live show and helping us to do this each week. And we will see you next week. And until then, make sure to sign up to that email newsletter so you don't miss any of our shows. We'll talk to you guys next.